Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, young leaders, and delegates of the UAE. I'm deeply honored to extend my warmest welcome to each one of you to this year's LCOY Conference of LCOY 2023. My name is Noor Al-Jindi. I'm a member of the dedicated LCOY Organizing Committee, Proposal Development Specialist, and COP28 Focal Point at ICBA. And I will be the MC for the opening session of our event today. LCOY UAE 2023 is the fruit of 6 months of dedication and hard work by LCOY Organizing Committee. The theme that we chose for this year is putting young people at the heart of climate action. With nearly 50% of the population in the UAE aged between 15 to 35 years old, we truly believe in the transformative power they possess in driving climate action, achieving net zero targets, and taking their well-deserved seats at decision-making tables. Well, LCOY this year takes on added significance as the UAE prepares to host COP28, as well as coinciding with UAE's Year of Sustainability. The two-day program includes various interactive sessions and discussions, biodiversity collage, which is an event happening in parallel today at the ICBA Soil Museum at 1:30, and a climate press workshop taking place tomorrow at Zayed University. And I'm also pleased to announce that we will conclude the day with planting half trees here at ICBA. So I really hope you can all stay and take part of this very exciting activity. The discussions and outcomes of the two-day conference will feed into this year's Youth Statement, the Regional COY, and COP28. This will ensure that the voices of the younger generations are heard at international and regional platforms and levels. At last but not least, I would really like to acknowledge the wonderful support and efforts of our partners and sponsors. Sponsors including Schneider Electric, Siemens, and Accuracy. Thank you very much for all your support. I extend our thanks to Zayed University for co-hosting the conference, members of the organizing committee, including United Nations Resident Coordinator Office, Global Shapers, Kulna Environmental Club at Zayed University, UN Global Compact Network, the Arabian Youth Environment Program, and the Arab Youth Council for Climate Change. All of you have played a pivotal role in bringing this event to life. Thank you very much. I also wish to thank ICBA's senior leadership, Dr. Sharifa Al-Zaabi and Dr. Sharb Al-Faryaw, for their continued guidance and support and for always empowering young people. And also to all ICBA staff who really supported us in various ways to make this event happen. I would like also to thank my colleague Ivan Skiyoko, the main focal point for LCOY. This event would have never been possible without your dedication, your incredible dedication and passion. Thank you. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Sharb Al-Faryaw, Chief Operations and Development at ICBA, to give his welcome remarks.
Good morning and welcome to ICBA. It's really very nice to see this young crowd, this morning. So we are all young, even I can see like some white hair here and there, but I think we are all young in heart. So just seeing you this morning, really, it is something refreshing, at least, especially for me coming. It's been a while since I interacted with how should I put it? Because I used to be a professor, I definitely. As a professor, you have to deal with young students, so it's been a while. Anyways, let me just put on my glasses here so that I can.
It's the stage before.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm pleased to welcome you all today. It's great to have many young people with us, as the overarching goal of our conference is to encourage youth engagement and leadership in climate action. LCOY UAE, as this conference is known, is a unique opportunity for you to make your opinions heard and contribute to discussions around climate change and environmental sustainability ahead of COP28. Your passion, creativity, and participation will make this conference special and interesting. At ICBA, we believe in the immense potential of the younger generation for climate action. But we also understand that providing young people with platforms and avenues to realize their full potential is important. At ICBA, we pay special attention to youth empowerment. Although our center mainly focuses on agricultural research and development, as an applied agricultural research center, ICBA has always been at the forefront of science and innovation for sustainable development and climate change adaptation and mitigation in agriculture. Our center develops and promotes solutions for making agri-food systems more resilient and sustainable under climate change, ranging from stress-tolerant crops for food and feed to resource-efficient technologies for water and land. But at the same time, we work to develop the skills and competencies of many stakeholders, including youth. We support undergraduate and graduate students, postdoctoral researchers, women and young professionals in leading and innovating for sustainable agricultural development, food security, and nutrition. We have a range of resources, courses, and programs tailored for undergraduate and graduate students, postdoctoral researchers, and women and young professionals, as I mentioned. We also have tailor-made initiatives, such as the Arab Women Leaders in Agriculture and the ICBA Youth Engagement Society. Our offerings include e-learning and online courses, fellowships, and internships. In particular, our center, for example, provides fellowships to postdoctoral researchers and students enrolled in graduate studies, masters or PhDs. And we also have a year-round internship opportunities for university students, mainly undergrads, and recent graduates from around the world. Our center has hosted many students and recent graduates from, as I said, from different countries, and we are committed to building on this success. Therefore, this conference is a logical continuation of our efforts to enable young people to lead and innovate. It is a result of close collaboration with several organizations. And I will reiterate what my colleague Noor mentioned. So I would like really to sincerely thank all our partners and supporters for helping us to make this conference today happen. I look forward to seeing engaging discussions and activities over the coming 2 days. And thank you very much. And I wish you really all the best in these 2 days. And now I will invite Dr. Tarifa, our Director General, to give the keynote speech. Thank you very much. And have a good day.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, and I've learned bonjour, just in case there's somebody who speaks French. We welcome you to LCOY. Sincerely, dear guests, our students, our young leaders, and also our colleagues and the team who've been working on this important event. Ahlan wa sahlan, and welcome to the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture. If you look closely to our motto, you will see that ICBA is about agriculture for tomorrow. Tomorrow is all about young people, Tomorrow is about the young generation. Tomorrow is about you. Who you decided today willingly to be with us to share this important event, and we get to engage you in also very important discussion. It takes me a great pleasure to welcome you. And it takes me also a great pleasure to encourage you to take a very thorough discussion and engage yourself in the activities that we have planned to add value to the efforts of the UAE and also the global efforts of sustainable development. Our world faces a climate emergency with far-reaching and wide-ranging consequences if we do not take urgent action. Weather across the world is getting hotter. Climate change used to be something we hear about in books and probably you studied not too long ago in university, and some of you still studying in university, but it's something that we're witnessing now, and we're seeing into our day-to-day operation, our day-to-day living, and we hear about it in the news. So it's really a struggle and a race against time. If we want to do something, we need to really join forces together and try to come up with solutions that will be suitable for now and for the future. Climate change is affecting every country on every continent. While its effects will vary from region to region, some areas and some people will bear the burden. One of the serious impacts of climate change will be on agriculture and food security, which poses many questions to the agenda that you will be discussing during the 2 days event. What can we do collectively? How can we continue producing more food with fewer resources? How can we work with the environment instead of working against the environment? How can we really scale up the solutions that we already have in place? As Dr. Sharbel mentioned, and you are already aware now with the mandate of ICBA, we have so many innovative solutions that our scientists have already contributed through the 24 years of operation of this center. So how can we really take it with your support to the next level? How can you become advocates, heroes for the environment, and we can work together into mitigating and adapting climate change? On top of that, it is very necessary to deal with unsustainable food production and consumption practices, including food loss and food waste. And you know that UAE marked one of the greatest and highest country with a food waste percentage. And how can we really ensure that we are contributing to reducing waste, food waste? It is estimated that 1/3 of the world's food is lost or wasted at different stages, from post-harvest storage to consumption, adding to the volume of the greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, we must adopt environmentally friendly practices and behavior. But also, we need to make agri-food system through research and development. We need to pay more attention to research and applied research. We need to focus on action research. We need to see something happening already on the ground with the support of you and interest from the youth. So why are we focusing on youth? We need to work together to mobilize every segment of the society, and especially youth, young people, make up the largest share of the population in many countries. We must tap into your potential, your ideas. We need to seek synergies. What can you add value, and what kind of ideas that can be contributing to the current research that we are doing in this center and other centers? Pay special attention to youth engagement and capacity development. We've heard greatly in details from Dr. Sharbel, but I must mention that ICBA, yes, Youth Engagement Society that has been launched by Her Excellency Mariam Yumheri, Minister of Climate Change and Environment in the UAE. This initiative has been launched in 2021, and we are working together to make sure that this is really happening, and we see the result of the continuous effort of us engaging youth in our research and our activities locally and globally. We want to help to grow different type of crops that are suitable for the environment with the challenges of the climate change. We need to together to contribute to the sustainable development, science and innovation. We need to understand that climate change and climate action, it is the responsibility for each one of us. It is not the responsibility of the scientists alone. It is not responsibility of the leadership alone. It is the responsibility of each person living on this planet. We all can make a difference, and we all can be part of this great effort. And this conference presents an excellent opportunity to bring you together on board to inspire the science and inspire the research, and also give us the opportunity to inspire you to make and lead this action now and for the future. You young people have a bright mind. Doesn't mean we don't, we do too. However, we need to cultivate and build on that. I am sure that your perspectives, your insights, and your contribution today will be great, adding value to our efforts locally and globally. I would like to express our deep gratitude to all the partners, sponsors, and also the Young Souls team from ICBA and the volunteers who made this event possible that we all share and enjoy today. Welcome again to ICBA, and thank you for being here with us today, and we look forward to fruitful discussion, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tarifa and Dr. Sherbet, for highlighting ICBA's commitment to empowering young people, not only in the UAE, but globally, and to always making sure that they can play a role in climate change adaptation and mitigation in the climate and the agriculture sector, and transforming food systems towards more resilient ones. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Sarah Shatila, Communications and Advocacy Officer at the United Nations Resident Coordinator Office in the UAE, to give her presentation on the role of UN processes, YOUNGO, and supporting youth. Thank you.
And then we'll talk a bit more on the roles of youth. And I know we have also more speakers to talk to you a bit more on the technical part, on the processes for YOUNGO and the LCOY. But feel free at any part of the session to ask any questions. This is a two-way session. I'm not here to just talk. I'm here to also listen to you, and this is, a two-way interactive session. So feel free to engage, to ask questions, and to participate. Okay? Now, before we start, let's hope. Let me see. I do have a video I wanted to show you. Okay, great. So I have a short video I want to share with you, which is the opening speech ahead of the COP26 that was happening in Glasgow, and this was addressed by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And why this speech was also very important is because this was the conference that took place right after COVID. And so at that moment in 2020, we did not have a climate change conference, and the world leaders came together for the first time afterwards. And so, as you can remember, we had a lot of challenges, coming from a global pandemic and a lot of inequalities being exposed, but we also had the threat of climate change. The idea here is I just wanted to share that this was also one of the moments where climate action was also being put on the agenda as an emergency, that we're not just talking on something that will affect future generations, but this is affecting us today, and we have to take urgent action. And one of the other main reasons is because, thank you. Okay. And so, because we also saw a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of inequalities that were exposed, not all people have been are affected in the same way by climate change. And so, putting in the agenda of leaving no one behind, of making sure that we're protecting the most vulnerable is also something of a priority that we also need to address. So when we talk about climate change, we also need to address all the other challenges that we're facing. Anyone here is familiar with the Global Goals agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals? Yes? Can anyone share or tell us more for those who don't maybe know what it's about? Any volunteers? Yeah.
So basically, there are many sustainable development goals, which are 17. They are mainly focused to secure for the next generation. The aim is to take responsibility now, so the next generation doesn't have to struggle with any of these things.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts?
The UN decided on these SDG goals around 2014 and 2015, and they aim to complete it by 2030. So the question right now is the feasibility of the completion of all these SDG goals by 2030. And around only 3 of these SDG goals have been completed fully. So right now there's a question of the feasibility of the completion by 2030.
Thank you. Other thoughts for a response? Any other thoughts? Okay, great. So the Sustainable Development Goals actually is an agenda that is not a UN agenda. It was adopted by all the member states. So 193 countries, member states that form the United Nations, they came together and they adopted the agenda that was proposed in 2015 on agreeing to address the 17 goals, which is addressing the common challenges, protecting and sustaining the lives of people and planet on a healthy and prosperous life through partnerships. And so we have the 15-year agenda, which is the Agenda 2030, which is trying to tackle and measure progress to address the SDGs by 2030. Is 2030 a deadline? Yes, no, is it? What will happen after 2030? Everyone's asking. Do we stop working on the SDGs? Do we say, enough, we can sleep at night? Not really, right? We don't really, we don't know if maybe we need to rethink how do we change our approach, and this is also now a conversation about accelerating action, realizing that we're not on track. And in fact, because of COVID-19 and other challenges and climate change, many of the goals in many countries, we face setbacks in achieving the goals. So in some countries, they had progress towards certain goals, but because of these challenges and threats, now we are regressing, we're having setbacks. And so the need for us to address the goals needs to change. We need to have accelerated action, and we need to look at it as a holistic agenda, and in a way that we don't see just one goal. One goal cannot be achieved at a time. They're all interlinked. And so even if we look at the climate action is not goal number 13 only, because climate action, as you heard also earlier in the speech, climate action affects food systems. So then it's also linked to zero hunger, right? Climate action, if we don't have, because of climate change, can you hear me? Because of climate change, it's also disrupting consumption and production. Because climate change, you can also affecting biodiversity, for example, then we have life below water or life on land. And we see like how all of these SDGs are interlinked. And for us to even address climate action, we need partnerships, right? We need strong institutions, peace, we need economic opportunities, we need innovations to address the engagement of young people, to bring in innovative solutions to address climate action. Do you all agree? Is there anyone that does not agree on this? Great, okay. So the reason why I wanted to address the Sustainable Development Goals is to see how we have this overarching agenda that guides the process and guides our actions and guides that global framework. And so from there, also some of the things that we mentioned is why the Global Goals is a unique agenda is because it's not just adopted by the UN, it's actually adopted by everyone. So everyone has the responsibility to achieve the goals, right? It's an integrated agenda, but it's also universal, which means that it applies to any context in any country in the world. It's interconnected, it's inclusive, making sure that no one is left behind. And in our approach to solve and address the challenges, we're making sure that we are taking into account the needs of the people who are most vulnerable and in the areas that were the most challenging. And also we have the accountabilities. We were able to track and measure progress. And no other agenda that we had before had this rigorous framework on measuring and tracking the SDGs through targets and indicators. Back. Okay. So who's responsible for achieving the SDGs? Is it the UN? Who is it? It's everyone, exactly. So we need the partnerships. SDG 17. Without partnerships for the goals, we will not be able to achieve or address the challenges, at least that we have. We need governments, civil society, we need youth, we need the international organizations, academia, and educational institutions, we need the private sector, and we also need the media and communications, right? Now, when we look at climate action specifically as well, so this was a conversation that was happening many years ago, and we were talking about the needs to safeguard the environment and to address biodiversity. And this is where one of the oldest UN agencies came into force, which is the UN Environment Programme. So in 1972, the UN Environment Programme was mandated to address the environmental needs and challenges of the world, bringing in scientific research, policies to address biodiversity and to address the environmental issues that we are facing in the world. And then a few years later, the UN Environment Programme, because we have a lot of the challenges with the industrialization and the way with the greenhouse emissions. So we had the UN Environment Programme and the World Meteorological Organization formed an intergovernmental panel on climate change specifically. So with the UN Environment Programme, tackling issues on the environment on a broader scale, now we also have this subcommittee or like a specialized agency focusing on climate change. And the role of the IPCC is that every year the scientists come together and they issue a report to tell us how are we doing on climate change, where are we, what are the threats, what are the needs that we have to tackle and we have to address. And this IPCC feeds into a lot of the processes and is used as reference because it's backed up by science, it's backed up by data for us to know on what are the needs and how are we affected by climate change. This was a very monumental moment. And then another agreement, we have also the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the UNFCCC was formed in 1992. And what it does is it brought together the parties. So this is where we say COP. And COP is the Conference of the Parties. So the parties to the UNFCCC are formed by member states, they're countries who are almost, I think, 198, if I'm not mistaken, 198 parties. Because they're not only individual states, but sometimes they negotiate also as blocks, where we see like the small island and developing states or the LDCs. And these parties, they meet every year to also negotiate and address and tackle issues related to climate change. And this is why now we're familiar with the COP28, because it's being hosted by the UAE. But every year, one of the countries and one of the parties, if we can say, hosts this conference. Last year it was in Egypt, and the year before it was in Glasgow, and so on. That's new? Yeah. So some of the key milestones that were achieved from the UNFCCC were the Kyoto Protocol, we'll talk a bit more about that, and the Paris Agreement. Is anyone familiar? Have you heard of these terms? Have you heard of the Kyoto Protocol or the Paris Agreement? Show of hands. Great. Can anyone volunteer and tell us more about what the Kyoto Protocol is? It's okay, even wrong answers, it's fine. Anything that you think. Thoughts? Yeah?
I believe that in Kyoto Protocol, the United Arab Emirates was able to join, and this was the year where the United Arab Emirates committed to be part of COP. So yeah, that was one of the biggest change in the UAE history.
Okay, great. I did not know that, so thank you for sharing. Great. Anything else? Yes.
In Kyoto Protocol, they actually abandoned a certain refrigerant, which is actually contribute to the greenhouse gases. And this was the major subject that has happened at the protocol, that most of the country, they actually pledged in order to abandon those conflict refrigerants to greenhouse gases.
Absolutely, this is it. So Kyoto Protocol really addressed the greenhouse emissions and focusing on the countries, especially the countries that had a lot of, that were more powerful in terms of industrialization, and they were the ones contributing to greenhouse emissions. So they had to put a limit and to agree on limiting their emissions and relooking on their operations and standards. And then in 2015, which is also leading up to that, there was also a very important movement, which is the Paris Agreement. Any thoughts on what the Paris Agreement is? Yes?
It is actually regarding to the global temperature. So it also the country pledged to keep the temperature below the 1.5 Celsius. And yeah, this is what the Paris Agreement was really about. And I believe that the country is still working on it. And this is supposed to be in the COP28, where the country started to see what happened actually in the Paris Agreement until today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. So the Paris Agreement took place when COP was hosted in Paris by France. And this is where one of the outputs of the negotiations was putting together this Paris Agreement, that we have 3 key elements to that, which are limiting the global temperatures and the rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, although now the conversation is we're talking about 2 degrees instead of 1.5. The other is having, making sure that we also, here I can show you. Yeah, this is clearer. And also reviewing the commitments, which is cutting the emissions every 5 years. And the third one is talking about climate finance and providing the needs for developing countries, and also acknowledging, maybe if you've heard like some of the discussions from last year, like the loss of damage fund, addressing the needs, making sure that countries contribute and help developing countries who are struggling with the impact of climate change. So there's more of a financial commitment to that. And why this year it's also important for COP28 is because we will have the global stocktake. So the global stocktake is probably also another term that you will hear a lot, but it's because the parties who will be meeting, they will be taking stock of the past year since the Paris Agreement to measure and see what have we done. Have we, did we stay true to our commitments? Are we off track? Are we on track? What needs to be done? And so on. So the global stocktake will also be a very important part and element of COP28. So just an overview, I think all of you probably would know. I just wanted to make sure we address this, the Conference of the Parties, which the Conference of the Parties, as we mentioned, is a process of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and works with bringing observer parties and non-observer parties and all stakeholders to negotiate and tackle issues related to climate change. And so we have in the climate change conference, usually on the blue zone and the green zone. The blue zone is more restricted or only for accredited parties and UN organizations and members, but also this is where the negotiations happen, because the key main outputs of those conferences are the negotiations. And this is where the commitments are being made. But we also have the pavilions where also members showcase their findings, their solutions, and discussions, because these are aimed to also feed into the negotiations, to understand and bringing in all the stakeholders and realizing by working together, we'll only be able to find solutions, and not just by pushing certain agendas and coming in and just trying to force them, but also by trying to understand the common reality, because climate change is a global threat. And the green zone is also for advocacy, engaging also with civil society, businesses, academia, so it also kind of brings in more the public into that conversation. It's not only restricted to countries and member states who are negotiating behind the doors, but also bringing in and giving the platform for civil society to also have a voice, to share key findings and solutions. So this is just an overview of, okay, what were some of the things that happened in the previous COPs. So these are only like a few examples, right? So we spoke about the Kyoto Protocol, which was an output from Kyoto Conference, and reducing the greenhouse emissions. We had in Morocco, we talked about the emissions trading. We also had the Paris Agreement, which was COP21. Glasgow speaking on the race to zero, and this is where some countries, including the UAE, for example, promised to have their ambitious plan on achieving net zero by 2050. So a lot of countries started putting those types of strategies. And last year in COP27 in Egypt, also it was the implementation COP, and it was also addressing the loss and damage fund. So this year in the COP28, other than the global stocktake, we'll see how these conversations also will carry through and will continue. There's always continuation from previous COPs, but trying to also see what needs to be pushed and what needs to be done. So where do we stand today? Do you think we've managed to solve climate change after all these years or not yet? Are we doing enough?
No.
Should we do more?
Yes.
What can we do? Take action, okay. What else?
Financing.
Financing, okay. So putting in resources.
Because a lot of countries are very developing, they don't have the resources to do. So you have to do something about that.
Yeah. So in a way, trying to also reduce the gap between the different countries and how different countries are the impact of climate change and trying to minimize that. What else? Anything else? Education. Great. So awareness and education. So as the UN Secretary General puts it, the era of global warming is over, and now we're in the era of global boiling. This is now an alarming state that we need to push for more accelerated action. But also, this is where we realize that the role of youth is not only something that we just add to the agenda or comes as an afterthought, but rather bringing in the youth into the process and being part of the decision making. Youth are not the generation of tomorrow, they're not the future. The youth are the generation of today. Youth are one of the most impacted by the threats of climate change, in fact. And in a generation, even today, in our world, we have the largest population of youth globally. And so addressing the needs of young people is important. And I just wanted to address here that the UN Secretary General also published policy briefs earlier this year in September. And in those policy briefs, one of them is on youth specifically, and including rigorous mechanisms on engaging young people in every process. One of them is establishing, for example, the UN Youth Office, but also bringing in young people in the decision-making mechanisms, and that this also needs to be a mandatory process. That when we have in UN organizations, but also in other official engagement and conversations, we need to hear young people and we need to have young people on the table. So how can you contribute? Some thoughts. By participating in LCOY. Great, what else? Joining YOUNGO. Great. We'll learn more about how you can do that. What else?
Mass plantation.
What?
Plantation.
Plantations. Great. So volunteering and organizing activities to help the environment. What else? Other thoughts?
Attending workshops.
Learning, attending workshops. Other thoughts?
Being active in the community.
Being active in the community. Great. And I know many of you here already are doing a lot, and we're very proud to see, young people, especially here and today, really making meaningful action. And I know that young people are not just, talking or having a voice, but there's a lot of action that is being done and being taken, and it is worth recognizing. These are some of the points. Also want to give you an overview on how can youth contribute, especially in relation to the COP28, since we're talking about COP. So we talked about climate action, participating in the LCOY. With the LCOY, usually you also have the local conference of the youth, you have the regional conferences of the youth, and you also have the global conferences of the youth. So these are also three kind of key opportunities where youth come together and they work on addressing those issues and having outputs. There's also the nationally determined contributions and national processes that also include young people, individual and collective action, participating in these initiatives and workshops, and taking climate action. great skills and jobs. We're also talking on how do we upskill and also be equipped to the needs of the future when we address climate action solutions. We also need to have, we talked about great skills and great jobs, which is the role of education and research and institutions that would help achieve that. And one was also an opportunity we mentioned, like having the youth advisory group or opportunities of like youth leaders and youth engagement opportunities and youth support. There's a lot of them that are offered either by the UN or other partners, and participants who are engaged in these engagements and activities are able to put their voices up for other youth all over the world as well. And COP specifically, and this was also as the first that we saw last year in Egypt. And this was very important. And so we will see that happening again this year because this pavilion was in the blue zone area, and bringing a youth into the blue zone where the negotiations are happening is also a very powerful statement that is also very important. And also this year, it was also one of the first things that was achieved was actually having 100 delegates for COP28 from all over the world. So before we leave with this, if we have time for more discussion, I also wanted to share with you a global campaign that was issued by the UN Development Program, UNDP. And the campaign is called Don't Choose Extinction. And this is one way of combining creativity and content creation with sharing a very powerful message on the threat of climate change. So I just wanted to end with that, and then we can see if we have more time for any questions.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
So with that, we'll just conclude our session for today. We wish you all the best and good luck for the rest of today's sessions and tomorrow. I know we're over time, but I'm happy to take any questions after. And I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, actually, for this very insightful and interactive presentation. Thank you, of course, to learn more about the UN processes, the importance of leaving no one behind agenda and SDGs. and most importantly, the impact that COVID-19 had on food systems and the role that youth can play in transforming food systems and improving food security in the UAE and globally. So thank you. With that, we conclude our morning sessions, and I would like to invite you all for a coffee break, which is also a great opportunity for networking. So please enjoy it, and thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Qadi, Element Monitoring and Assessment from EAD. Today, we would like to give you an insight about the terrestrial biodiversity in Abu Dhabi Emirates. The UAE showcases a remarkable species biodiversity despite its desert climate. So we will go through different ecosystems that exist in Abu Dhabi. First, we do have there are 4 major ecosystems found in UAE generally. Desert ecosystem, as you all know. Mountain ecosystem, which is mainly in Ras Al Khaimah and Al Fujairah. Coastal and marine ecosystem, which as you can see all through the coastal line of UAE, and wetland ecosystem, which is this distinguished area between land and the marine life. So the terrestrial habitats in Abu Dhabi Emirates, we do have mega zones, like you can see it's Al-Giwa, the Zayed, etc. And you can see the sand sheets and the low all over the roads to Abu Dhabi, and it's a major landscape or terrestrial habitat. You can see also the gravel plains combined with the sand sheets and low dunes. We will have also inland wetlands, which is, for example, Al-Watba wetland was recognized as protected area due to the special characteristics of the habitat there. Also, we do have mountain and wadis, which is symbolized by Jabal Hafid National Park. Also, we do have mudflat and sabha. Mudflat and sabha, also you can see it on the road to Liwa or also near Al-Watba area. What about that the species that existing in all that habitat? We do have in Abu Dhabi Emirates about 2,532 species of invertebrate recorded from only the Abu Dhabi of Emirates, which is 63% of all invertebrates in the United Arab Emirates. EAD are monitoring or continuously monitoring and having a surveys in different ecosystems to find out how many if there is new species to be added. The good news is we do have new 16 invertebrates new to science. It's been named according to the place that is being found. For example, you can see the new species existing on the right side. We added Al-Watba name for type of the gastropods because it was found in Al-Watba. Also, the other species were found in Al-Hibara protected area, so we named them according to that. Moreover, some of the dragonflies named after our SG Secretary General, Dr. Sheikh Al-Bahri, to support her scientific, as a woman scientific efforts. It's not only reptiles, also we do have, not only invertebrates, also we do have reptiles. In Abu Dhabi, we do have around 48 reptile species, 2 are amphibians. Some of the reptiles are diurnal and the other are nocturnal, which means they are active either on night or in the morning with the sun. They lay eggs and feed on insects and plants, so we can sometimes consider them as a bio indicator and bio control for the ecosystem. They can also actively be active in summer because they have a sunbathing activity and they wanted to be exposed to the sun during the summer season. We do have 2 reptile species are listed as locally written by ICBA, which as you can see them here, the Egyptian spiny-tailed lizard, and the other one, the first picture, which is a golden eagle. Also, we do have have 42 mammal species in Abu Dhabi Emirates, and they are very adaptable to the harsh climate and desert ecosystem. We do have Arabian Tahar, which is a globally threatened species in Abu Dhabi, and EAD is monitoring their population. We do have also 4 mammal species are listed as locally threatened by ICBA. As you can see them now in the picture, we do have the sandcar, sandfare, and Arabian oryx. Moving to the birds, it's not only on land, also we have a couple of flying species, almost about 427 bird species found in Abu Dhabi. 85% of them, they are migratory, which means they either breed in Abu Dhabi Emirates and move to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, other countries, and coming back to UAE, or the opposite. They are breeding in Seychelles or breeding in Iran, Kazakhstan, the upper region, and roosting in our region, which make us as a distinguished stock or a breeding location for such bird species. Some of the regionally important species breed in a very large number onshore or offshore islands. They use it as a stop or layover location to complete their migration to the other destination or the final destination. 19 species are globally threatened. However, 33 species are listed as locally threatened by IUCN. EAD is monitoring all the white bird populations since 2003, and we do put satellite telemetry on these species to identify their flyways. How we did know that they move to Seychelles or Kazakhstan or Mongolia, etc. Because of this satellite telemetry, we deployed them on those species, and we can identify their pathway. And we are doing that since 2005. We do have a very interesting project, although we are monitoring the species and assessing their status year by year. Also, we are doing a reintroduction program of certain species, as this is part of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Arabian Oryx reintroduction program. We reintroduced almost 20 Arabian Oryx in Shumari Wildlife Reserve and nearly about 100 Arabian Oryx to the Oryx protected area. Also, Environment Agency translated, I think you might saw here are there a couple of news or the documentaries that have been published about the mission to Chad. They translocate the skimmered horn oryx in the to Chad, and which is part of the largest mammal reintroduction program, which is we are proud of. We can complete now with the plant species with my colleague Nina.
Thank you, Noof, for giving me the floor, and I'll take you on a quick brief on the plant species in Abu Dhabi. What makes What makes Abu Dhabi's flora truly exceptional is its ability to adapt to challenging environmental conditions, where it withstands high salinity and high temperatures. Abu Dhabi is home to over 400 species of vascular plants. Some of them are perennial and some are annual. So you see them either perennials are more like trees, and then the annuals just complete around a year and then they die off, the cycle ends. Many of these species have evolved, like I said, and a lot of them, when we look at where these plant species are found, we discover that the mountain and wide ecosystems have the highest species diversity, followed by coastal ecosystem, and that's because of the elevation and the increase of rainfall in these ecosystems. It is also vital to note that we have 23 plant species that are considered locally threatened as per the Abu Dhabi Red List of species. Moving on to a little bit of what we do in terms of conservation at the Environment Agency. We have the ex situ conservation programs, which means that we are conserving plant material outside of their natural habitat. We have the Plant Genetic Resources Center that we're hoping to open by the end of the year. This center will not only serve the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, but also the UAE as a whole. It will have long-term conservation due to the technology we will be using, which is the cryopreservation. We will be conserving the seeds and the tissue culture, tissue material to be able to propagate plants in case of extinction or conservation. We have a lot of programs, ongoing programs. We have the plant nursery, which produces about 500,000 seedlings every year, some of which are used in rehabilitation programs around the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. Continuing with the in situ conservation, one of Abu Dhabi's strategic goals is to increase the percentage of protected areas in Abu Dhabi. As of now, we have 19 protected areas, some of which are marine and terrestrial. They are essential to conserve the biodiversity and preserve the ecosystem health. It's also a good way to mitigate climate change and support local ecotourism. Another part of it I wanted to highlight that in addition to these environmental benefits, protected areas can empower youth. We have a range of youth research programs and initiatives. We have the Murshid Youth Rangers, which is a program that empowers youth and children to not only be educated about the environment, but also help in protecting it. A little bit about an exciting project and how at the Environment Agency we're using fourth revolution technologies like the drones. We have ongoing successful critical habitat restoration. As you can see, we are replanting some mangroves on the right or the left. I'm not sure how the orientation is. And this technology will help us achieving the 1 million target set by the Abu Dhabi Mangrove Initiative. It is a cost-effective way to replant. I'm not sure if any of you have participated in replanting mangroves. You know how labor-intensive it is. This is a faster way to do that. And I don't know if you know this fun fact that mangroves actually sequester carbon much more efficiently than terrestrial plants, for about 4 times more. So it is what we consider a nature-based solution to sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. To make sure that these plantations are successful, we have ongoing research to monitor and assess plant health using these fourth revolution technologies. And I just wanted to highlight, although you see on the news a lot of work using drones, I just wanted to stress the importance of conventional methods to monitor, assess, and conserve. So the drones currently only supplement what we do as the agency. They don't take over. For the next slide, we actually wanted to go into the sustainable development goals, but Sarah already went through it briefly, so we'll just wrap it up. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions or would like to add anything or inquire. You can have the floor or or you can take it off after the session.
Thank you very much, Megan and Boo, for that interesting. I learned a lot of different facts, and I have planted mangoes. I'm so sorry, not in Abu Dhabi, but in Ajman. It was really nice. So, can I suggest that you have any questions for the lovely ladies to do that in the lunch break instead, so that we can continue. We're a little bit lagging time here. Yes, please.
Thank you.
So, our next speaker, I would like to introduce Safeguarding Natural Resources and Biodiversity for a Sustainable Future. And I would like to welcome to the podium Mrs. Monica Cooney, Head of Strategy and Impact of Emirates World Wildlife Fund. Welcome.
So it's a lot to pack in. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay, great. All right, so it's a lot to pack in 10 minutes. So we're gonna move fast. If you have any questions, find me afterwards. I'm not gonna do a lot of PowerPoint. I think I prefer to speak to everyone. No, there's another one from the email. So actually, I wanted to start off today with a story. So at an event earlier this year, somebody stood up and started discussing the need for carbon capture and storage technology. And as they were going through it, they said it needed to be low cost, low maintenance, easily deployable around the world, and that anybody could use it. Now, for all of us who know how intensive and how difficult it is to create these technologies, I started thinking, we have so many of these tools that currently exist in nature. So maybe mangroves that store 4 times as much carbon as rainforests. Rainforests are also the most well-known. Seagrasses and their sediments can store up to 35% more carbon. Who knew that? How many times do we go out and walk in the water and we think seagrasses are absolutely slimy and disgusting? Probably all of us, but they are a powerhouse and they are now my favorite plant. Finally, soil. How do I forget soil? Right? Our experts here at ICBA do an incredible job with soil. Don't underestimate soil either. So the moral that we need to remember is that looking to nature can help us address the most critical issues facing us today. So Dr. Teresa at the beginning opened by saying, today we must work with the environment, not against it. So I will be discussing how we can protect, preserve, and restore nature, what are some smart complements to nature, and what all of you can do locally and globally. So from this entire talk, the one thing I want you to remember is that nature is our biggest and greatest ally when it comes to tackling climate change and building resiliency. It's okay. It's fine. It was mainly pretty pictures that you could look at that like inspire you, so it's not a big deal. So yeah, so nature is our biggest ally when it comes to tackling climate change and building resiliency. Don't forget that. You can forget everything else, but just remember that. So in the past decade, nature has absorbed over 50% of carbon dioxide emissions from the atmosphere. Yet in the last 50 years, we've seen a 69% drop in species population. These numbers are stark. However, nature also provides so much for us. So when managed correctly, it can protect us, our coastal and marine ecosystems. They limit storm surges, and they shield us from costly, catastrophic destruction. It's okay. It's really okay. It's okay, I promise. It was only like 4 slides. It was pictures. So nature also opens up business opportunities for us, ecotourism, but also in the finance sector. When you look at green and blue investments, it helps transform our food systems, right? And it strengthens our food sovereignty and food security. And of course, it helps us sequester and store carbon. One of, I think, the most relevant points that everybody forgets is how restorative it is. So it supports our mental health and our physical well-being. I mean, how many of you feel really great after you spend a day outside? Like you Yes, okay, thank you. I hope there were more of you. But study after study illustrates the benefits we get from spending time outdoors. So it's really critical that we support our ecosystems and actively leverage nature as a tool to build a more sustainable future. So I'm going to briefly go back to the science. So I know, Maytha, you discussed nature-based solutions. Is anyone brave enough to define it? Nature-based solutions. You can, yeah, go for it. Come on, Angel.
I would say nature-based solutions are just solutions that are already occurring in nature that are going to help us tackle some of the biggest challenges that we have in climate change. So it could be carbon capture, but it could also be like figuring out how to recycle your water through like regular plant systems, you know, and figuring out how to tackle floods and things like that through already, I guess, these existing systems.
Perfect. Okay. So nature-based solutions are any activity or action that helps boost our ecosystems and biodiversity and also provide socioeconomic benefits. So perfect. You said all of those. So what people think is that nature-based solutions could provide about 1/3 of the climate change mitigation needed to meet the Paris Agreement by 2030. So 1/3, incredibly significant. So locally here at WWF or Emirates Nature WWF, we have a number of projects that all of you can also participate in. We have a project in Al Quwain and Abu Dhabi. And unlike traditional conservation projects that often close areas off, the entire point of this is to reinvigorate the community, involve the public, to get everyone involved. Not only that, we're piloting with ICBA a native food source to see how viable it is, not only from a commercial perspective, but also how it can improve the livelihoods of local farmers. We're building eco trails. And finally, we're trying to find bankable projects for investment. We're also planting mangroves, so I won't necessarily go into that. But in addition to the amazing amount of carbon storage, mangroves are also a nursery for many of our marine species, and they're incredibly precious. So sharks, rays, turtles, and fish. Fish also help our local communities, and it helps bolster their income. We also don't ignore terrestrial-based initiatives. We have a project in the Hajar Mountains, which is primarily focused on building resilient communities. And we've had some people who are members of one of our programs that I'll speak to you in a little bit. They have built an eco trail by hand. They have rebuilt a filage, which is a traditional irrigation system, by hand. So this really illustrates the power of community, and we can't do it alone. So, however, increasing nature resiliency it can't solve all of our problems. We have to have cross-sectoral collaboration in order to advance green solutions locally and globally. And we're all facing these really catastrophic crises, including plastic pollution, rapid urban development, rising emissions, all require a whole of society approach. So other complements to nature must include things like decarbonization of industry to reduce emissions, shifting from linear to circular economies, which to reduce the amount of plastic and the most harmful toxic chemicals leaching into nature. Food systems transformation, which I know the next speaker is going to discuss. It's one of my favorite topics. And finally, increasing the use of renewable energy. So all of these issues are really challenging and they're daunting. And we need to involve everybody. You're going to keep hearing this throughout the day. It is not just scientists to rely on. We need all of you. So some of you are in graduate programs, some of you are still in university. Really take a look at your career path and see how you can integrate climate and nature at the heart of your decision making. So if you're a math major, you can go into climate modeling. If you're an architect or an engineer, maybe integrate biomimicry. Teaching, you can equip and inspire the next generation. And then even if you're an artist or graphics designer, how are you going to inspire everybody visually? So another one, which I know you'll hear of, is planet-based eating habits and choices. Now, I'm not telling everybody to go vegan, which I know everyone thinks environmentalists do, but we do recommend experimenting, try cutting out meat a few times a week. But I think one of the biggest things here in the UAE is to rethink your delivery frequency. I have a neighbor who gets their food delivered maybe 5 or 6 times a day. Imagine the emissions from having a cup of coffee delivered. So this is, I think, something if you can take away as well, consider that. Finally, join us at Emirates Nature WWF. We have a few programs for you to join. One is the Connect with Nature program in strategic partnership with EAD. It's a program that focuses on leadership development. We're really proud of, it's been running for 4 years. We've been so proud of it. We've had the first UAE COP youth delegate comes from our cohort. We helped develop her over the last few years. So take a look at that. There's also an app, which is better. And we also have a Leaders of Change program where you can participate in some of the projects that I discussed, and you can contribute directly on the ground. Now, this is a paid program. However, for youth, if you keep an eye out, we often have sponsorships, so you can get a year membership for free. So keep a lookout. It happens pretty frequently. And finally, come see us at COP28 in the Green Zone. We will have some really interesting activations, and they're all experiential, but you will learn a lot, and you will also help contribute to the legacy of the UAE. And so we want you to join us and help build a healthier and better future. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I'm certainly going to be the one to look up WWF's website this evening. There's so much you can do. And I really, really enjoyed that in the Hajar Mountains with the locals and so on. So thank you very much. Yes, tight schedule. Next speaker is, the topic is importance of food and the nutritional security in the UAE. May I please welcome to the stage Ms. Amal Al-Hamadi, Head of Agriculture Research Department, UAE Ministry of Climate Change and Environment.
So good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amal Al-Hamadi. I'm the head of R&D at the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, and I also manage the food security file for the UAE. I'll try to make this interactive and short because we don't have a lot of time. So to begin with, what is food security? I don't want to answer this. I want you guys to answer this to begin with, because I see a lot of future decision makers, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of international representatives, hopefully in the area of food security. So I want to ask you. So can I get some answers from you? What is food security? Try your best.
Local brand.
Locally made.
Yeah.
Great.
It's when people have access to locally made affordable and healthy.
Very good. What else?
I think it means the availability of the solution at any time and no shortage. Maybe local made or
Important, yeah.
Please correct me.
You're totally correct. You're totally correct. All the answers I've heard so far are correct. Anything else? Yes.
Usually the food security comes the country save the food or import the food or be able to discover ways to plant the fruit or the vegetable in that country. By, for example, the United Arab Emirates doesn't have a perfect soil. So they can go with the hydroponic. There is another alternative that the government experienced that from the food security from other countries. So it's exchange knowledge.
Very good.
Secure food for next generation.
Very, very good. So, yes?
I just have one more thing. It's just to make sure that the community or the UAE community have the basic, let us say, the basic access to the food, let us say, which is the basic requirement.
Very good. Thank you. You guys are very knowledgeable, actually. Makes my life easier. So, what is food security, right? So this presentation is mainly done because I didn't have the time to make a presentation especially for you. So hopefully, if you in the future, can't move this, unfortunately. Oh, okay. So we have in the UAE a food security strategy. Here you go, developing a food security strategy. This presentation, you guys are very high level because this was made for decision makers to transfer knowledge on how to develop food security strategies. So you guys are now decision makers, right? So how did we develop the food security strategy? We need to start with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed quote on the importance of food security. The realization of food security is a joint responsibility, starting by each individual and the family and their consumption patterns of resources, and ending with the interaction by the community and as well the public, private sector, institution, and their support for the overall plan. So we can see how Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed is very much emphasizing basically on the importance of food security and how important each individual's role in the UAE's food security. So moving on, what is food security? This is basically all the answers that you guys have answered, enabling the UAE's population to have access of healthy, sufficient, safe, and nutritious food for an active lifestyle and affordable prices at all time, including emergencies. So it's not just for emergencies, it's for the entire time we need to take care of our people, everyone living in the UAE, right? And actually, these, no, it's not like that. Okay, so these are the pillars of the food security. This is basically how globally food security is measured: affordability, that we can afford the food in the UAE, availability, it's easily available. We don't have any limitation to access the food. Quality is also food security safety, that this food is not, contaminated, for example. It doesn't include huge amount of pesticide, for example. This is also food safety. And then the sustainability as well and adaptation. So even climate is also here relevant to food security. This is the history or of the food system landscape. This is something you will take care of when you become decision makers on developing the future plans. This is basically how we studied the situation in the UAE. What did we study? Basically, the demand, supply, technologies we have, strategic context. You probably also learned about the impact of the political, environment, economic factors on any system, food security being one of those systems as well. And this is the history of the legal landscape. So this is something also very important whenever we talk about strategies impacting the people of the UAE. And then we come to the very important decision that the cabinet have made in 2017 of appointing Her Excellency Mariam al-Mahiri to become one of the first, I believe, Minister of State for food security specifically. And here, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid gave Her Excellency one of the most difficult tasks, actually, to develop a comprehensive food security strategy for the UAE that has long and short-term plans to bring up solutions to basically adapt to, to our climate change and to bring solutions for our food security, and also to prepare, someone here mentioned, food security for future generations. We do care about what we have now, but we also care about what future generations have available for them. This is basically how the relevant event started. Okay, and this is the vision and the mission of UAE's food security strategy. So you see, we want to be a world-leading hub in innovation-driven food security. It's huge, right, for the UAE to set up such a vision for a country that doesn't produce a lot of food. We import maybe 80% of our food, more than 80% of our food from abroad. So why do you think we have this very ambitious vision? This is a question for you. Why do you think we have a very ambitious vision to become a hub for innovation-driven food security?
Strategies. We have a lot of strategies, and we always have long-term work and short-term work. We always investigate and see what will change. So I feel like it's one of the reasons why we're thinking way further.
Very good.
need to be ready and to be on guard facing the challenges coming in the future, mainly the water scarcity. Because agriculture is one of the main source of the water resources in the world. So being ready, that's actually not new to UAE, but it's something that is always in the mission of all institutions to be predict what's going to happen and be ready for it.
Very good. Agility is very important. Yeah. Very good. We have someone here. Yes, please. Absolutely.
As UAE, we don't have the features that to have a food supply for a long term. We don't have rain, we don't have the fertile soil. So if we will invest on that, it will cost us a lot. However, if we will go for innovative driven solutions, it will cost us less, be more efficient, and help us to fix the problem that we have. Like as we said, as we faced in COVID time, it was we are locked in a certain country, we cannot import, we cannot export, many things happen. However, if we do have all the solutions here in UAE, it will be easier for us to sustain any problem in the future.
Very good. Yes.
I would say, like, from an international relations standpoint, it's actually really important. You can actually have a lot of power and influence if you are a hub for food and agriculture production. It actually can strengthen your diplomatic ties and help grow your power and influence more broadly than just the message.
Very good. Any other answers? I really love this audience. You guys are, I'm telling you, you guys are answering my questions very well. This takes us actually to the strategic objectives of the UAE food security strategy. Go through them. It actually mentions every point you have already said here. What are the goals? Facilitate global agribusiness, trade, and diversity of international food sources. Why? Again, we are dependent for more than 80% on food trade, food import. Diversity. Why? We cannot be dependent on one country for one product. We need to diversify our resources, right? This is very important for food security. We know a lot of countries that were dependent on one or two countries had a lot of issues when they have limitations or challenges when it comes to imports. So this is one. Then we have enhanced sustainable technology-enabled domestic food supplies. And that was mentioned, I believe, twice. Sustainable and technology-enabled. That's why you go back to innovation-driven. Even UAE's vision, actually, it's innovation, or if I remember correctly, it's knowledge-based. We want to provide or to develop a knowledge-based economy. It's all, revolves around, right? The third one, reduce food loss and waste. This is a huge target for us. Worldwide, there are is lost or wasted. You have no idea how many, people that are hungry around the world this can feed. It can feed those people 3 times, actually, all the food that is wasted or lost. And it would be important for me to mention that waste is very different than loss. Food loss is basically whatever starts from the farm all the way to processing. Waste, which is a lot, it's from the retailer, from the supermarket to the consumer, to us. And we have a huge role here to take care of, to reduce food loss and waste. And we do have a lot of great initiatives in the UAE. Then we go to sustain food safety and improve nutritional intake. And as a government, we take a lot of responsibility here. Food safety measures are one of the highest in the world. Food nutrition, we try to improve this with schools, with awareness, and I'm hoping with the newer generations that we are more, aware of this. We're more, moving toward healthier food practices, We don't eat a lot of junk, not a lot of food deliveries, unless it's, nice salad, sustainably resourced and all of that, right? And then we have enhanced the capacity to respond to food security risks and crisis. So this is something the government also take care of. God forbid, anything happens, like COVID, for example, as mentioned, we have a plan to take care of our people. Whatever happens when it comes to import, we still were able to import a lot of food because we do have a lot of good diplomatic relations, actually. So I told you guys mentioned all the answers there. These are the enablers. So these are the enablers that we have that enable our strategy, enables us actually to implement our strategy successfully, right? We have built an effective food security governance. So as a ministry, we have that governance, but we do not do it alone, actually. We always believe in partnerships, in multilateral partnerships. We work on that with other government entities, research organizations like ICBA, actually, academia, private sector, locally and internationally. Then R&D, and I hope, as you know, as a researcher from the very beginning, I hope that I see a lot of future researchers, inshallah. And then we have acquired data. Data are very important. Whenever you have, the ability to collect data, it is very important. If your professor tells you collect accurate data, make sure you do it. It is very important. And then we have enhanced availability of quality human capital for food security. You guys are the human capital. We are the human capital that needs to study very well, acquire knowledge everywhere, even if it's not from the university. Most of the knowledge that I got wasn't from the university. It was, self-taught. And then engage the community to shift food security notions and behavior. So it's also on all of us to change the behavior. I know, for example, in our community, in our culture, we're always about making more food, more but not less. It's time for us to educate our family. We need to, chill when it comes to our generosity. We need, to provide enough food, but not a lot. This is our food security. We don't have a lot of food produced in the UAE, so we need to be mindful. And there are a lot of people around the world that, dying of hunger. We need to be mindful. These are the entities within the Emirates Food Security Council that basically take care of the food security in the UAE, led by the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. So this is something very high level. I am in the secretariat of this council. Inshallah, in the future, I will see some of you in that secretariat or in that actually council, be a minister and you'll present us there. These are some of the committees under this council that are working on some of the major issues, coming up with solutions, and working on implementing those strategic objectives that we discussed in the beginning. These are the main food items that we focus on for trade, for investment, for domestic production. This is basically where the UAE stands. This is one of the great achievements for the UAE. Where do we stand? We don't produce a lot of food, but we're doing really good. We're 23rd worldwide. We're a country that doesn't produce food, where our food security rank is 23. So that's huge, actually. You can see we are in the dark blue. So this is very good. In affordability, availability, quality, sustainability, we're ranking, in all the nice blue colors, all nice shades of blue. So we're doing pretty good. And these are some of the achievements. These are other achievements that I would like for you. If you want to take a picture, that's fine. I would like for you guys to Google these, to be part of them, to, look them up. What are these? How can you take part of it? For example, the Food Tech Challenge, Food Tech Valley, this is a new project. If you guys want to be entrepreneurs with new solutions, this is an area, basically a cluster for food technologies. It should have basically all the entire supply chains. And whenever we develop an economic cluster, R&D and entrepreneurship is a key part. So whoever of you guys, I have a lot of, confidence in you that I'll see a lot of entrepreneurs. That's probably our next step. NEMA initiative. This is the national food loss and waste initiative that His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Zayed have launched. This is emphasizing on our role to be involved in these practices and aim for climate. I know I passed my comment. Who knows what is aim for climate?
It's a partnership with the US and it's on like agricultural innovation.
Thank you. Yes, very good. So also please look that up, right? Everyone else, it is a partnership. This is an emphasis, on UAE's interest to have multilateral partnership to improve food security, not just for the UAE, for the global community. So for this initiative, for example, it's not for the UAE only. Everyone globally can apply for aim for climate, and there are a lot of sprints, especially for agriculture innovations, that we approve, and we have more than 300 countries and organizations that actually have joined this initiative, and billions of dollars of investment to invest in innovations there. Last but not least, I promise you I'm done. Very good. The year of sustainability. You know about this, right? His Highness announced that this will be the year of sustainability, and I think this should push us more towards sustainability. And last but not least, COP28. I know, I hope I will see a lot of you at COP28. I know I will see, right? I hope I see the rest of you at COP28 to join, try to join most of the events there. As youth, we want most of you to be there. Don't just come for food security, come for all of them. For climate change, energy transition, all the controversial subjects, come and learn, listen to everyone, all different opinions. I'm so sorry, I took a lot of time. Please ask me questions later on. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Aman, thank you very much for that insightful report, and I'm sure we will all be at COP28, certainly. And I suggest you should also do your local composting, because that's very, very easy. And even though you may not have a garden, you can plant some seeds on a balcony as well, in a high-rise building. So please sit in your chairs for 2 minutes. We just need to pull out the 4 chairs here for the next panel. Stay on, and yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please raise the attention and be seated kindly for our next panel discussion. So the next topic is the nationally determined contributions, NDCs, and the role of climate finance. I would like to welcome to the stage moderator Aisha Najib, UNICEF Youth Advocate.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm Aisha Najib, the UNICEF Youth Advocate, and I have the great pleasure to be moderating today's panel on NDC with amazing panelists. So please do give them a round of applause. So first, we have Zayed Thomas, again from UNICEF side. He is the UAE program lead as well as the chief of child protection for UNICEF Gulf Area Office. And then we have Neha Mujib, who is the public sector advisor with Global Shapers. And then finally, but not the least, we have Rajiv Chan, who is a climate investment professional, again with the Global Shapers. So first, I would invite Zayed Thomas to please address the gathering on child-sensitive climate policy.
Very good morning. I would prefer this as well, but I have my notes, so yeah, take your position in between. Delighted to be here, spending time with a really young people. from UNICEF perspective, advocating for a child rights lens in the whole conversation around climate change. Now you might ask, why children at the center of climate change? Yeah, and this is the question that we normally get asked. You have human rights, so why do we talk about child rights? So obviously the answer is quite basic. Children have vulnerabilities that the adults normally don't have. But children also bring perspectives and insights that the adults very often cannot, right? So they are a source of both strength, resources, but also vulnerabilities which adults have to cater to. So that I think is the first thing about NDCs. So if you have an NDC that doesn't apply child rights lens, at least as far as we are concerned, that NDC is quite big, right? So that I think is the first thing that we would like to talk about. In terms of how UNICEF goes about analyzing this situation, we have developed a number of tools. So one of them is the Children's Climate Risk Index. So something launched a couple of years ago, where we have a list of checklists, and we apply that to each of the countries that we work in, and we work in most of the countries around the world. And we have this index about how much at risk are children in each of these countries that we work in. Yeah, so UAE is in the list, and so is many of our countries that we work in. So that's one of the resources we use to analyze the Children's Climate Risk Index. What does it tell us? And I'll start with MENA. In MENA alone, the analysis tells us that 82 million children are at risk. Now, it's just one region around the world, and the number is quite stark, right? When you're saying 82 million children are at risk of climate change impacts, and the number is quite high, and this is likely to go up significantly, at least to a 98 million to 100 million by 2050. So again, the scale of the problem is quite huge, which also means you have to come up with approaches that will address it. I won't go into the basics of why children are at risk. I'm sure probably some of you can answer that, right? But when I was going through the data, using the sources, even basic things like children are short in height, right? And then you have air pollution. And who do you think are at most of air pollution? So even those basics about children being at risk with their height, with their body weight, the food intakes, we spoke about food security. Children need more food proportionately than compared to adults for their age, right? So if there is a food crisis, people who are going to be most affected are children. So there's a lot of resources out there. Please visit, UNICEF resources, otherwise we get. Again, I'm sure you are aware of what NDCs are, right? These are nationally determined contributions, the commitments made by countries in addressing climate change. And we call for a child-sensitive NDC, yeah? And what does that mean? There are 4 criteria that we apply to make NDCs child-sensitive. And the first one is references. Yeah, so you take an NDC. By the countries that we work in, sometimes we just Google children, child, and you will be surprised. You might see just 3 times. So the references to children sometimes are lacking. So even if basic analysis will tell you, almost all of us assume that when you say people, you are talking about all children, and like I said, that's not always the case. So the references to children, child rights, risks faced by children is itself the first criteria that we give with. Rights-based. What does that mean again? What does human rights-based approaches mean? What does child rights approaches mean? Yeah, and like I said, rights imply accountability, right? So if children have rights, somebody else is accountable. And who is accountable? Of course, adults, parents, the states. Yeah, so each of the country governments have an accountability towards people, and especially the most marginalized or among the most marginalized who are children. So, is there a lens of applying that child rights, accountability, participation? So if people have rights, are they participating in the solutions that you're coming up with? Yeah, so that's the other thing. Aisha is a minister of advocate. We have about 10 of them in the country, but they just represent the hundreds of thousands of children in the country. What are those mechanisms that you create so that children meaningfully contribute to whatever you are determining, whatever action plans you are developing for the country? So the point about rights-based approaches, I mean, we can discuss a lot more, but I can come back to it later. Inclusive, yeah, deriving or following the rights-based approach. If it is about children, are they included, both in the documents that we produce, but also in the way we engage, in the way we come up with one of those strategic documents. So inclusive, holistic and multi-sectoral. Yeah, so it's not just about one sector. It's about education in many ways. The temperature is gone. How conducive is to education and children the way they play, play contributing to their learning. Food security is spoke about a number of issues. So this is multi-sector. In any sector that we work in, it has to be it has to address all the sectors where it has a significant impact on children. Why do we need child-sensitive kind of policies? Critical for social services. So there's a lot of talk around green services, right? So if you have schools, even the way education is delivered, can schools be green, right? This is an initiative that the State Education is about to support. So the education services needs to be green, health services need to be green, and that also means different things, right? First of all, the infrastructure, accessibility, what is provided, and then also what is being provided is sustainable. So all these questions around services, child rights secured and acted upon. So rights is rights only if it is realized, right? So that's the other thing. And then the whole focus around young people. We always go to children. They bring impressions inside, but it also means finally their children, right? So their experience of life is limited. So they also need a lot of support in developing these capacities. So investing in their capacities as well. So that was the context. And then I think I will straight away go to a very exciting initiative that we have launched. It's 2 days ago, Jason. It's called, it's a platform, and it's called NDCs for Every Child. So we have come up with a set of 47 indicators, and it's a platform which is available online. And all the countries can go in and see how NDC, how sensitive are the NDCs in all their countries. So we have this resource online. UNICEF itself has done analysis from our end. Then I don't have all the highlights here, but it's available publicly. You can go to UAE UAE, where does it rank in terms of NDC sensitivity. So again, something that will be available publicly. Countries are welcome to use it. We apply actually wherever we work, we use it with the dialogues on NDCs and their child sensitivity. Again, moving on to action. So you have the risk analysis, you have the NDC indicators and analysis. It should be the strategy, right? So the action framework, what we call the ACE action for climate environment. In all the countries we work with different entities on having an action program. And that's what the young people will be asking us for, right? This is the reality, what are you doing about it? And I should say, at least in the UAE, we see tremendous opportunities. So right now, we are with the Ministry of Education to make sure that all the schools in the UAE, before COP28, the teachers and the school principals undergo a capacity building initiative on climate change. So we will put them through a process where there will be a lot of self-learning, then there will be direct trainings, and then coaching and all that. So all the schools in the UAE, especially the public schools, are going to be geared up for a whole work around climate change. I spoke about engaging young people. UAE is one of the few countries, at least for UNICEF, where we have a dedicated team of 10 youth advocates, who gives us a tough time, right? I mean, they come to us. You should listen to the kind of questions that my can ask us, not just anybody else, even UNICEF. We get questioned, we are challenged, they question the governments are challenged. So, but that's the beauty of that initiative. So we appointed them, and with very minimal support from our end, they are a force on their own. And we hope that kind of results in a network for the country, space for young people to make their voices heard, and then make it sustainable. Lots more other areas of work. You will see something about math competition that we have launched, and then the net zero heroes. We are looking for about 30 young people from UAE who would be identified as potential young people to be contributing to this issue as well. So that's just on the framework, the action component of it. Just a couple more points, I'm sure I'm going to sort of find. The General Committee 26, the UN instrument. So this is the other thing. The Committee on the Rights of the Children launched the General Committee 26, a UN instrument for looking at climate change and children. And in fact, at the COP28, there will be a dedicated day when we look at the General Committee 26 and what does it mean for countries and the NDC of the world. Right, so I should probably stop here just to say that as we work towards COP28, we see tremendous opportunities. We see a lot of leadership of the UAE itself. So I think this is the first time at the COP28 you have a dedicated day for children and youth related issues, right? It's something the initiative of the COP28 secretariat here. You have and then you also have the Youth Climate Champion appointed, so all that is coming together. So there will be, in this COP, we're quite confident, there's going to be a lot of conversation around children and youth. And that's the other thing, the last point. For us, there'll be a lot of focus on youth, and children are missing. I think this is probably one of those first COPs where there's also a lot of focus on children, right? So it's very easy to overlook children because sometimes they don't speak, right? So it's not just about youth. It's also about children from 0 to 18, right? So that's the vision. In fact, with one of our entities here in UAE, the Early Child Authority, we are also looking at early years and its impact on, and the climate change impact on very young children. So you will see a lot. Very happy to be here, and just to the young people, you are the force that we acknowledge and we look forward to. So please feel free to reach out and thank you.
Thank you so much, Saji. So one thing to add to what Saji had mentioned, so far in all of the COPs, we have come from the COPs. Youth are usually vaguely mentioned somewhere in the text, maybe like in the preambular paragraphs, which like most leaders just like skip through. But for the first time last year at COP27, we had the term children being mentioned in the draft outcome text. That has never been done. And we campaigned a lot to make that happen. And this time, children and youth's meaningful participation in decision-making around climate change were explicitly stated in the draft text. And that too in one of the operational paragraphs, which is a huge achievement. And along with that, this was localized because this year, UAE updated its NDC, its nationally determined contribution, and it integrated the ACE element. ACE is Action for Climate Empowerment. And along with UNICEF, the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Climate Change, we have been working to take a look at how can we make Action for Climate Empowerment implemented in all schools and universities across the UAE. So that's a huge deal. It's a big victory that we achieved. Now, the NDC and the Nationally Determined Contribution is a national effort to mitigate the impacts of climate change, to keep our greenhouse gases within check. And we cannot do that alone as UN entities. We cannot do that alone as young people of civil society. We need to work together, collaborate with the public sector and private sector. And it's a pleasure because we're joined by Neha, who specifically looks into this effort on how the public sector and how the governments can kind of pivot the private sector together the people in the planet, along with how they can sustain in socio-economic benefits. So I invite Neha upon to address.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. People are alive. Great. So my name is Neha. I spent the better half of my career in governments and support private sector, support civil society organizations in looking at various social issues. In essence, I believe public sector just has three main roles, right? What they are trying to do is one, set ambition, two, fill in any gaps, and three, ensure inclusion. Now, what does that mean? When we look at setting of ambition, first what we want to do is really set quantifiable targets. What does this mean in a UAE NDC context? So what you're seeing here is snippets from UAE's NDC. This is the third update, as Aisha mentioned, that was out this July. And UAE was one of the first to really commit to net zero by 2050. And that is that first component. You set a quantifiable target and you make sure everyone is leading towards that. Then once you set that large target, you cascade it down to industries, to Emirates, to every single component that can actually contribute to that. So that's what you see at the right-hand side, right? Those are all the different strategies at the Emirate level, at the company level, that feed into the NDC and that overall net zero target. And finally, and this is something that's extremely important, is the government sets pace, right? How they set pace? So in our previous commitment that we gave to UNFCCC, we said that by 2030 we would reduce emissions by 31%. We actually updated that ambition this year in the update that Aisha was talking about to make it 40%. So we've actually said that not only are we going to get to net zero, we're going to get to it faster. What this does, I know sometimes it seems like just talk. What this does is actually send signals to the market that the UAE or the country that is setting up the NDC is serious about what it's trying to do. It gives a signal into which industries and which sectors they're going to focus on. And that gives signals to the private sector to say, hey, the government is focused on this, we're going to expect more things around this in this country. Let's see how we can leverage that in the best way possible. Right? So here we're trying to find that win-win situation. Now, let's say we did get the private sector to be interested. The private sector is not going to be interested in everything as well, right? Because we have to think of profitability as well. So the second key role for governments is really to fill gaps. Now, filling up gaps can be in a couple of different ways. One, the one that we talk about a lot is really knowledge gaps, right? Awareness sessions, youth outreach, and things like that, which are also extremely important. But there are other gaps that probably governments need to get more serious about filling. One is the data gap. We have a lot of data gaps within the climate sector, especially when it comes to climate finance. And that's something that governments need to start pulling together. There's also gaps in regulatory frameworks because all of these topics are fairly new. So sometimes even governments don't know what to do with them. So there may be gaps in terms of policies, frameworks, legal standards that we can update or that we can put in place. And finally, funding gaps, right? You can look at incentives, you can look at de-risking certain portfolios, or actually investing directly into something. Ideally, the government should not be investing here, right? Ideally, the government should be creating an ecosystem that attracts the right partners, attracts the right private sector to come in and put the money there, right? That really shows that there's enough confidence in the NDCs and the targets that we're trying to create, and there's enough opportunity that is being created. And that's what government really wants to do is create these public-private partnerships to make sure that it's an ecosystem building effort and not just we'll put in this as a band-aid and then it doesn't actually become sustainable growth, right? So a good example of that, and I'm sorry, I know the graphic isn't great, but you can find it in the NDC. So in the NDC, there's UAE's hydrogen leadership roadmap. And they've listed out 5-6 things that they want to do. I don't want you to focus on that. At the very bottom, the government has laid out a couple of enablers that they're going to pull to be able to bring that hydrogen map to life, right? And these are things like setting up a regulatory framework, setting up a governance on hydrogen, providing land, which is essentially an incentive, and developing partnerships. So these are the 3 core ways in which really the government has to fill in that funding gap without actually putting the money down. Okay? And that's really the role of the government. And finally, coming back to kind of what Zayed was saying, the last role that the government really has is to ensure inclusion. NDCs are done in consultation with different stakeholders. It's not just Mocha sitting in one room, pulling together the NDC. They talk to everyone within the ecosystem. And talking to the big players, like your laptop is easy, right? They'll come to you, it's easy to find them as well. But what the government needs to do is to make sure that there is equity and inclusion in this process, right? To make sure that they include women, children, youth, people of determination, indigenous people, especially in this country, expats, right? To make sure that everyone who can be affected by the NDCs is included in the process. And included in the process in a fair way. And why is this important? This might sound a little fluffy, but what we want to try and do with the NDCs is that we don't want to perpetuate any inequalities or inequities that already exist, right? Because any new policy has to make sure that it is not making worse what is already existing and actually benefiting everyone in society. So, long story short, what does the government want to do? What is the goal of what was the goal of the government involvement in NDCs? Is really to provide clarity, to ensure completeness or comprehensiveness, and to ensure that it is just and fair for everyone. And with that, I will stop my speech and hand it over back to Aisha.
Thank you so much, Neha, for that really clear and compact intervention. Now, as Neha has stated, we have a lot of work to get done, but we cannot get that work done without the finance. Where do we mobilize this finance from? So that leads me to introduce us to the next speaker, Rajit Chan, who has an academic background working on climate finance exactly, and also dealing with a lot of private equity projects with the lens of decarbonization and sustainable investment. So please welcome Rajit Chan.
Everyone, really nice to meet you, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this panel. So I represent the private sector. I've primarily been working in the private sector across my career, and I think, as Neha and Sajid mentioned, private sector involvement is very important in mobilizing capital and also in achieving some of the sustainable development goals as well. So I think to begin, I want to share with you a bit more what climate finance is and the importance of that through a video, and then thereafter share with you a couple of discussion slides so that we can learn a bit more about the magnitude of climate finance that is required, as well as the key stakeholders and how you can play a part in this ecosystem as well.
It's not in the distant future, but happening now. It's already having severe consequences for societies and people's livelihoods. Politicians, scientists, civil society organizations, and advocacy groups, such as the Heinrich Böll Stiftung, as well as communities around the world, are grappling with these impacts and costs. Potential ways towards a sustainable and just future exist, But shifting away from fossil fuels and strengthening the resilience of communities, ecosystems, and economies is expensive. Some, but not enough financing for climate action has been pledged and collected to ensure that funds are available for the necessary changes. But where does the money come from? The money should come from the countries that are responsible for the damage and have the capacity to make it right. This is a matter of justice, climate justice. Industrialized economies in the United States, England, and Germany have profited from carbon-intensive economic development. But this development path is no longer an option for poor countries that need to skip a few steps and go directly to using clean, renewable energy. Meanwhile, small island nations and heavily indebted poor countries are hit the worst by the impacts of climate change. This is even more unfair, considering that their contribution to the problem has been minuscule. In these countries, the worst affected people are the poor and marginalized, women, the disabled, the elderly, and the indigenous peoples. Climate change aggravates existing problems such as inequality, discrimination, and poverty. This is why climate finance should be targeted to help vulnerable population groups. Rich countries owe developing countries a historic climate debt. Based on the key principle of climate justice, that polluters must pay, it is their obligation to help pay for the costs of addressing climate change. So, how much money is needed? Careful estimates say hundreds of billions, if not trillions. And the longer we wait to tackle climate change, the more expensive it gets. In 2009 in Copenhagen, industrialized countries committed to contributing $100 billion annually by 2020 to address the issue. Since then, many climate funds and initiatives have sprung up, but rich countries' contributions have yet to reach their goals. And the long-term future of many climate funds is not secure. While rich countries are supposed to take the lead, most of the money today comes from the private sector, and governments increasingly give loans that need to be paid back. However, loans place a strain on poor recipients, and investors often have priorities that do not align with the needs of communities and countries. This is why public climate finance should be mostly in the form of grants, especially for helping communities adapt to the impacts of climate change. But what's this money for in practice? Climate finance is used to fund projects in mitigation or adaptation, and more cross-cutting activities that combine both. Funding for adaptation builds hurricane shelters or seawalls. It restores mangrove forests or wetlands, helps manage water systems to deal with severe droughts or floods, and provides farmers with better seeds and forecasts to improve their yield despite unpredictable weather. When done well, these projects allow communities to bear the worst effects of climate change and adjust their livelihoods to an uncertain future. Mitigation projects reduce greenhouse gas emissions by shifting energy production towards sustainable sources. Examples of this include funding for clean transport in cities, generating renewable energy from wind and solar power, or planting trees in deforested areas. These projects can address energy poverty in rural areas by distributing renewable energy to people who have never had electricity. They provide clean cooking solutions to the 2.7 billion people worldwide still using traditional biomass fuels like wood or dung. And they also provide entrepreneurs with the cheap loans needed to buy energy-efficient equipment. However, not all mitigation projects are good projects. Large hydroelectric dams can displace people and destroy their livelihoods, while growing food crops for biofuel can increase food insecurity. Misguided climate mitigation can easily make things worse. The most successful projects put people first and give communities and marginalized groups a strong voice in designing and selecting them. With so little money available for climate projects, only the ones that do no harm to people or the environment and the ones that benefit human rights and gender equality should be funded. But there is so much more to understanding climate finance. Check out our following videos on the gender dimensions of climate finance and on the Green Climate Fund, one of the largest public global climate funds.
So that video was very short, but also very telling video of many very important areas to consider when you think about climate finance and when you think about private and public sector partnership and involvement in this space as well. And I think the most interesting part is how much money is required to solve and to address and to get to net zero in the next, by 2030, by 2050. And that number shows how much involvement from different stakeholders is required. So you can see from this chart, to close the gap for climate finance, a staggering 11 trillion is required to get the planet to net zero by 2050. And this is going to go to projects involving agriculture, including reforestation, including land management and restoration. It's going to go towards both mitigation and adaptation projects as well. But 11 trillion is a number that it can't be achieved if it's just coming from the private sector or just coming from the public sector. There needs to be both public-private partnerships in order to achieve this. And I think one very interesting thing that we are seeing now is this concept of blended finance, essentially using public finance, commercial and developmental public finance, to enable and support the mobilization and the use of private and sovereign capital. So these are banks, developmental banks like AIIB, like NDB and so on, and also the government funds as well. And they, through those investments, they enable private sector and sovereign capital, the likes of in Dubai, the sovereign wealth funds here, and then Abu Dhabi as well as private capital, including large private equity firms, large infrastructure funds, to start going into this space. And that's how you unlock capital through blended finance. And I think very importantly, you know that blended finance is also going towards solving some of the more important goals. And there's also a very strong framework that's being used when it comes to investment selection, investment diligence, and investment management. So you can see that this is being mobilized across the day, and I think it's very important for very important for youth to be involved in this movement as well. So how can youth be more involved in learning this area of climate finance, especially in the private sector? 3 ways. So one is to upskill yourselves, especially if you're in university or even in junior college, being able to understand the importance of some of the concepts such as economics, mathematics, and environmental engineering and so on. These are very important skills for you to understand where and how you can enable some of these technologies to develop to address some of these goals and address some of these challenges. Another way for you to learn more of this is also to volunteer. So there are many platforms out there that enable you to learn more and develop your skills and volunteer alongside other like-minded youths. Obviously, YOUNGO, who is organizing this event, is one. They actually have a climate and finance and markets group where they share a lot of knowledge about this area, and you can participate in discussions and negotiate for some of these the terms as well in climate finance. And I think lastly, also think about donations, or even if you're not able to donate, how can you help to fundraise for some of these programs? So I think WWF was here just now, but UNICEF also has their own programs, and there are just many programs out there that are targeted at solving for some of these challenges. So how can you play a role, either through donations or through fundraising from the community, and to let people be involved in more actively involved in the role of private finance. So I think that is mainly the key points, but I can address if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Zayed. Can we give a huge round of applause for the panelists? One thing that I have noticed, which is super interesting, is that we as children and youth are often, spoken about as the future. But we're already here. We're here sitting in front of you all. And we're already policy makers, we're already scientists, we're already researchers. Can I get a show of hands? How many young people are in the room today? If you're a young person, put your hands up. If you're young, put your hands up. So we're here. So we're not just the future decision makers. maker, but we are the present decision maker. So my question to the panelists here is, Saji, how do you think you are going to ensure that young people, here is your hands, how can we meaningfully engage in realizing climate, child-sensitive climate policy? How do you think we have, that young people in the room, can be a part of global shapers? How do you think global shapers can support us in the work that we do? And Rajiv, all the young people in the room, how do you think we can get involved in climate finance and sustainable investments? So who wants to go first?
Yeah, so obviously it will be one of the youngest people around, right? So yeah, no, I think climate change is a field where we have already seen what young people can, right? It's a really issue that we can look at where the way young people made their voices heard and actually made adults feel both accountable and a bit embarrassed about not doing enough. So I think there are also good examples, but I would just say information is key, right? I mean, I do think young people have a way of capturing and processing information like no one else, right? And they're good at it. The way your brain works now, I think it's quite different from at least my brain works. So I can see that nimbleness about youth, about that energy, but also capturing data, So I would say, yes, use all those talents that you have to convene, connect. But I would also just pitch in some of the UNICEF resources which are already there. The CCRI, the Child Rights Index. Now, if you go there, you get specific tools about how your country is doing. So you use information from whichever sources, which could be even UNICEF, and then use that as an advocacy point, I would say. Yeah, so just use their energy, use their networks, use their social media presence. Some of our youth advocates, including you, they have a reach of millions, and I think I have like 20-30, so I would say, yeah, use all that, but also you are a rights holder, which means you have a claim. So it's not, nobody is doing anybody a favor, right? So you are a person, you have your own rights, and you have a claim, and you have a right to make your voices. So use that.
Thank you, Saji.
Maybe just building on what Saji said, I think we're very lucky in this country because there are actually a lot of platforms already available, right? So of course there's the stuff that UNICEF is working on. We heard from LWF about the program they have. There's also Mazdar's Wiser program for women. And of course Shapers that we're talking about. So we are a youth for youth community. And it's not just sustainability, we work on all social issues, and you can come in and work on any issue that you want to work on, right? And if you want to learn more about that, there's ourselves and there's Razan sitting here, who's our curator. Feel free to ask us questions. But I think more importantly, on a more personal note, I'd like to say that don't get overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that there is around climate, right? Everyone's talking about climate, everyone's saying something different, everyone's working on a lot of numbers, it gets very confusing. I am on this panel, I am not an expert, right? And you don't need to be an expert to get involved either. Everyone is learning. As Zayed said, sometimes you get into a meeting, you are very embarrassed by the lack of knowledge you have about a particular topic, because sustainability and climate isn't really one vertical, it cuts across any and everything you do. So there's absolutely no way one person can know everything about everything that's happening in the world. So see what is exciting to you, what speaks to you, and get involved in that. There's always going to be a climate angle to it, whether you like it or not. So I'll just say, start from what you prefer and what you like it, and get involved as much as possible.
Thank you, Neha.
I think really good points by both Sajid and Neha. So just briefly add on, so how can young people be more involved in finance and sustainable investments? I think there's many ways, but I think one very interesting way is that you and your parents might be investing in funds or bonds or even like stocks and so on. I think it's very important now that a lot of these funds, they are now rated on the sustainability scale. So I think always look out for the kind of company that you want to invest in, or the kind of even fund that you're investing in. are they sustainable? Are they, do they meet your personal criteria? Obviously, I think the term is profit, purpose, and planet. Obviously, you have to profit. I mean, in both cases, as a private individual and a private firm. But you also need to think about purpose and planet. So always balance these three whenever you make, a decision on financial decision or even an investment decision. I think, obviously, if you're keen to work in climate finance and investments, this is a space that's growing. There's not enough good talent. There's a lot of capacity and capabilities that are required here. And a lot of people from universities and high school who one day graduate, and this could be a potential career path for you. So some good things to do are what need to obviously read news, to learn a bit more, especially from sites that are more focused on climate finance and sustainable investments. I think also to make sure that you take the relevant courses in your university and high school so that you're prepared to do this. And I think most importantly, to know what is your passion and what is your purpose, and embed this into your daily life and in everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Regine. And I think a major takeaway that we can have from everything that was mentioned in this panel is that children and young people were not only the center of this crisis, but we're also the center of action. So make sure to take all the information they share and make it your own. Make it your own for your advocacy, for your campaigning, for mobilizing the change that you want to see in the present and for the future generations that's coming up. And I also want to conclude by saying that as young people and children, we always say nothing about us without us. So that's also a demand for all of the leaders that's sitting in the room who are not young people, who have their own entities and firms. Make sure that you're not just talking about young people and children without meaningfully including us in each of your program and work. And with that, I would like to conclude our panel. Thank you so much.